Have you ever wondered who really founded the Catholic Church? Was it a single person, or was it shaped by centuries of events, decisions, and controversies? For millions around the world, the Catholic Church is a cornerstone of faith, but its origins remain shrouded in mystery and debate. Today, we're peeling back the layers of history to uncover the untold story behind one of the most influential institutions in human history. The Catholic Church's story is more than just tradition and ritual, it's a saga filled with pivotal moments, surprising figures, and decisions that changed the course of civilization. From humble beginnings as a persecuted sect to its rise as a dominant force, this journey is nothing short of extraordinary. We'll dive deep into the historical, spiritual, and political factors that shaped what we know today as the Catholic Church. Why does this matter? Understanding the Church's origins is about more than satisfying curiosity. It's about challenging assumptions, exploring faith through a fresh lens, and connecting with the broader story of humanity. Whether you're a history enthusiast, a spiritual seeker, or simply someone who loves unraveling ancient mysteries, this video promises to deliver something truly eye-opening. So, who was truly responsible for founding the Catholic Church? Was it Peter, the so-called rock? Was it Emperor Constantine, who legalized Christianity and transformed it forever? Or could the answer lie in a combination of forces we rarely consider? To truly understand the origins of the Catholic Church, we must first journey back to the 1st century, a time when the seeds of this institution were being planted in the dusty streets of ancient Palestine. The world Jesus and his disciples inhabited was one of political tension, cultural complexity, and profound religious anticipation. The region was under Roman rule, a sprawling empire known for its unmatched power and relentless expansion. For the Jewish population, life under Roman occupation was a delicate balance of survival and spiritual resilience. Many Jews clung to the hope of a Messiah, a deliverer who would restore Israel to its former glory. It was in this charged atmosphere that Jesus of Nazareth began his ministry, introducing teachings that would inspire, challenge, and ultimately divide those who heard them. The early followers of Jesus, ordinary fishermen, tax collectors, and outcasts, embraced his message, though they likely had no idea how their small group would grow into a global movement. After his crucifixion, they believed in his resurrection and dedicated their lives to spreading his teachings. At this stage, the term Christian didn't exist. These early believers considered themselves part of the Jewish faith, but with a revolutionary twist, they saw Jesus as the fulfillment of the long-awaited messianic prophecies. As the message of Jesus spread, conflict inevitably arose. The Jewish leaders viewed the followers of Jesus as heretics, while the Roman authorities saw them as a threat to the stability of the empire. This dual rejection led to widespread persecution. Christians were often scapegoated for disasters, forced into hiding, and even martyred in horrific spectacles. Yet, instead of extinguishing their faith, persecution only seemed to strengthen their resolve. By the end of the 1st century, the movement was no longer confined to Jerusalem. It had spread to cities like Antioch, Corinth, and Rome itself. With each new city came new challenges and questions. How should this growing community organize itself? Who would lead them? And perhaps most crucially, how could they preserve the teachings of Jesus in a world hostile to their beliefs? This period also saw the beginning of formalized practices that would later become hallmarks of the Catholic Church. Early Christians gathered in homes to break bread, share scriptures, and pray. These gatherings, known as house churches, were simple yet profound. They mirrored the Last Supper and emphasized the unity of believers, a theme that would remain central to Christianity. However, as the movement grew, so did its need for structure. Leaders known as bishops began to emerge, taking on the role of shepherds for their communities. Among them, the Bishop of Rome would eventually claim a unique position, citing the Apostle Peter's connection to the city. But this wasn't an immediate development, it was part of a slow evolution that spanned centuries. It's important to recognize that the early church wasn't a monolithic entity. Different regions developed distinct traditions and interpretations of Jesus' teachings. For example, the Christian communities in the East, such as those in Alexandria and Antioch, focused heavily on theological debate and the intellectual aspects of faith. In contrast, the West, centered in Rome, leaned more toward practicality and organization. These differences would later lead to tensions within the broader Christian community. Through it all, the question of identity remained: was this movement a sect of Judaism, or was it something entirely new? The destruction of the Temple in Jerusalem in 70 AD forced a decisive break. With their spiritual center gone, both Jews and Christians were compelled to redefine themselves. For Christians, this meant embracing a new identity, one that would eventually stand apart from Judaism entirely. This redefinition wasn't just theological, it was also cultural. As the faith spread throughout the Roman Empire, it began to incorporate elements of Greco-Roman thought and practice. This cultural blending was both a strength and a source of controversy, as it raised questions about the purity of the original message. By the 2nd century, the movement that began as a small Jewish sect had become a diverse and growing community. It still faced persecution, but it also attracted followers from all walks of life, including influential philosophers and statesmen. This gradual shift from the margins to the mainstream laid the groundwork for what would eventually become the Catholic Church. The foundation was set, but the journey was far from over. The next phase in this story would involve significant figures and events that would shape the Church's identity and establish its place in history. One of the most debated figures in this narrative is the Apostle Peter. Was he truly the rock upon which the Church was built, or is this an interpretation that evolved over time? The role of Peter, myth or reality? When we talk about the origins of the Catholic Church, the Apostle Peter stands out as a central figure. Revered by many as the first pope, Peter's legacy is both celebrated and debated. But how did a humble fisherman from Galilee become associated with the foundation of one of the world's most enduring institutions? Let's untangle history from tradition and examine the evidence. Peter in the Scriptures. Peter, originally named Simon, was one of Jesus' first disciples. According to the Gospels, he was a bold and impetuous figure, often speaking or acting before thinking. Yet, he was also deeply committed to Jesus' teachings. In Matthew 16 verses 18 to 19, Jesus tells Peter, "You are Peter, and on this rock, I will build my church. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven." This passage has been interpreted as a direct endorsement of Peter's authority, making him the spiritual cornerstone of the church. But what did Jesus mean by this rock? Some scholars argue that Jesus was referring to Peter's declaration of faith rather than Peter himself. Others contend that the passage was written with the intent of establishing Peter's leadership role among the disciples. This ambiguity has fueled centuries of theological debate. The keys to the kingdom. The metaphor of the keys to the kingdom is another key element in Peter's story. In biblical times, keys symbolized authority and stewardship. By granting Peter the keys, Jesus was entrusting him with a significant responsibility. The Catholic tradition interprets this as the establishment of a spiritual lineage, positioning Peter as the first in a line of popes. However, non-Catholic interpretations often view this as a more symbolic act, representing the shared responsibility of all believers to spread Jesus' teachings. Peter's leadership in the early church. In the book of Acts, Peter emerges as a leader within the fledgling Christian community. He delivers powerful sermons, performs miracles, and plays a key role in important decisions, such as welcoming Gentiles into the faith. His leadership is evident, but it's worth noting that he wasn't the only prominent figure. Paul, James, and other apostles also held significant influence, suggesting a more collaborative leadership model. One of the most pivotal moments in Peter's ministry is his vision in Acts 10, where he is instructed to eat foods previously considered unclean. This vision leads to the inclusion of Gentiles in the Christian community, a groundbreaking shift that shaped the future of Christianity. Peter's willingness to embrace this change highlights his role as a unifying figure, bridging cultural and religious divides. Peter in Rome, fact or tradition? A central claim of the Catholic Church is that Peter traveled to Rome, where he became the first bishop and was ultimately martyred. This connection to Rome is crucial, as it establishes the papal lineage. But how solid is the evidence? Historical records from the 1st century are scarce, and the New Testament doesn't explicitly mention Peter's presence in Rome. The earliest references come from later sources, such as Clement of Rome and Ignatius of Antioch, who mention Peter's martyrdom in the city. Archaeological discoveries, including the tomb beneath St. Peter's Basilica, lend some credence to the tradition, but definitive proof remains elusive. Peter's legacy, a construct of tradition. Over time, the role of Peter was amplified as the Church sought to solidify its authority. By linking the papacy directly to one of Jesus' closest disciples, the Church established a foundation for its spiritual and institutional power. This wasn't merely a theological move, it was also a political one. Aligning the Pope with Peter provided a sense of continuity and legitimacy, especially in a world where authority was often contested. Critics argue that the elevation of Peter's role was a gradual development, influenced by the needs of the early Church to establish a clear hierarchy. They point to the fact that the concept of a single, supreme leader didn't emerge until centuries after Peter's death. Instead, early Christian communities operated more autonomously, with leadership distributed among various bishops and elders. A symbol of faith and unity. Regardless of historical debates, Peter's symbolic value cannot be overstated. He represents the flawed yet faithful disciple, a man who denied Jesus 3 times but was ultimately redeemed and entrusted with a monumental mission. For Catholics, Peter embodies the enduring promise of the Church, that despite human imperfection, it remains a vessel for divine truth. The ongoing debate. The question of Peter's role continues to be a point of contention among scholars, theologians, and believers. Was he truly the rock upon which the Church was built, or has his legacy been shaped by centuries of tradition? The answer may depend on one's perspective, but what's clear is that Peter's story is inseparable from the history of Christianity itself. As we move forward, the narrative becomes even more complex. The institutionalization of the Church didn't rest solely on Peter's shoulders. Figures like Emperor Constantine would play pivotal roles in shaping what the Catholic Church would become. But before we dive into Constantine's influence, let's pause and reflect on Peter's enduring significance. His story reminds us that the foundation of the Church is as much about faith and community as it is about history and tradition. Constantine and the consolidation of Christianity. As we shift from the story of Peter to the broader historical landscape, a pivotal figure emerges, Emperor Constantine. Often regarded as one of the most influential individuals in the history of Christianity, Constantine's impact went far beyond personal faith. He fundamentally transformed the trajectory of the Church. His reign marked a turning point, taking Christianity from a persecuted sect to an officially recognized and eventually dominant religion within the Roman Empire. The Edict of Milan, a radical shift. In 313 CE, Constantine, along with co-emperor Licinius, issued the Edict of Milan. This landmark proclamation granted religious tolerance throughout the Roman Empire, effectively ending centuries of persecution against Christians. For the first time, Christians could worship openly without fear of arrest or execution. This wasn't just a relief for individual believers, it allowed the Christian community to organize and expand in ways previously unimaginable. The Edict of Milan is often seen as a turning point, but it's important to note that it didn't elevate Christianity above other religions, at least not initially. The Roman Empire was still deeply pluralistic, with traditional pagan practices holding significant sway. What Constantine did was level the playing field, creating an environment where Christianity could thrive. Constantine's conversion, genuine or strategic? One of the most debated aspects of Constantine's legacy is his personal faith. According to tradition, he converted to Christianity after experiencing a vision before the Battle of the Milvian Bridge in 312 CE. The vision reportedly included a symbol of the cross and the words, "In this sign, conquer." Interpreting this as divine guidance, Constantine ordered his troops to adopt the Christian symbol and went on to achieve a decisive victory. But was Constantine's conversion heartfelt or politically motivated? Some historians argue that his embrace of Christianity was a calculated move to unify the empire under a single, cohesive belief system. By aligning himself with a growing and increasingly organized religion, Constantine could strengthen his authority and foster loyalty among his subjects. Evidence supporting this view includes the fact that Constantine continued to honor some pagan traditions, even after his conversion. For example, he retained the title Pontifex Maximus, the chief priest of Roman paganism, and his coins featured images of Sol Invictus, the sun god, alongside Christian symbols. It wasn't until his deathbed baptism in 337 CE that Constantine fully committed to Christianity. The role of Constantine in church organization. One of Constantine's most lasting contributions was his role in the institutionalization of the church. He provided financial support, commissioned the construction of churches, and even participated in theological disputes. His reign marked the beginning of a closer relationship between church and state, a partnership that would shape the Catholic Church for centuries to come. The First Council of Nicaea in 325 CE is a prime example of Constantine's influence. Convened to address the Arian controversy, which questioned the divinity of Jesus, the council was a milestone in the development of Christian doctrine. Constantine himself presided over the opening session, emphasizing the importance of unity within the Church. The resulting Nicene Creed established a foundation for Orthodox Christian belief and demonstrated the emperor's power to mediate religious matters. Christianity as a tool of empire. Under Constantine's rule, Christianity began to transition from a persecuted faith to a cornerstone of imperial policy. This shift wasn't just theological, it was deeply political. By aligning the Church with the Roman state, Constantine created a framework where religion could be used to promote social order and imperial unity. For example, the emperor's endorsement of Sunday as a day of rest aligned Christian practices with broader societal norms. He also introduced laws reflecting Christian values, such as restrictions on certain types of work and the abolition of crucifixion as a form of execution. These changes not only reinforced Constantine's authority but also ingrained Christian principles into the fabric of Roman life. The founding of Constantinople. One of Constantine's most significant achievements was the founding of Constantinople, a city that would become a center of Christian power for centuries. Established in 330 CE as the new capital of the Roman Empire, Constantinople was envisioned as a new Rome with a distinctly Christian character. The city was adorned with grand churches, including the Hagia Sophia, and became a hub for theological scholarship and debate. By relocating the capital to the east, Constantine not only strengthened the empire's strategic position but also ensured that Christianity would have a central role in its cultural and political identity. Criticism and controversy. While Constantine is celebrated for his contributions to Christianity, his legacy is not without controversy. Critics argue that his close involvement in church affairs blurred the lines between spiritual and political authority, setting a precedent for future conflicts. The fusion of church and state under Constantine created a dynamic where religious leaders wielded political power, and vice versa, a situation that would lead to both opportunities and challenges in the centuries to come. Additionally, some question the ethical implications of Constantine's actions. While he promoted Christian values, he also engaged in acts of violence and political maneuvering that seemed at odds with those teachings. For instance, his execution of his son Crispus and wife Fausta for reasons that remain unclear casts a shadow over his moral character. Constantine's enduring legacy. Despite these complexities, Constantine's impact on Christianity is undeniable. By legitimizing the faith and integrating it into the fabric of Roman society, he laid the groundwork for the Catholic Church as we know it today. His vision of a unified empire under a single faith inspired subsequent rulers and shaped the trajectory of Western civilization. As we reflect on Constantine's contributions, it's clear that his legacy is a tapestry of faith, politics, and ambition. His reign illustrates how the Church's foundation was as much about historical circumstances as it was about spiritual convictions. Other crucial factors in the foundation of the Catholic Church. While Constantine's actions were pivotal in shaping the future of Christianity, the foundation of the Catholic Church was influenced by many other critical factors. The historical, social, and political environment in which the Church grew, along with key developments in the Roman Empire, played a significant role in its institutionalization. Let's explore these elements, including the impact of the Roman Empire, the evolution of Christianity as a political and cultural force, and the early papacy. The Roman Empire, a shaping force. The Roman Empire, at its height, was a vast, interconnected world that spanned across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. Its infrastructure, legal systems, and cultural norms provided a framework that greatly influenced the development of Christianity. In many ways, Christianity thrived within the Roman Empire because it was an urban religion. Roman cities were the hubs of trade, communication, and political power. Christianity spread quickly in these areas due to the well-established roads and communication networks that allowed for faster travel and the exchange of ideas. Early Christians often met in secret in urban settings, and the spread of Christianity through Roman cities was facilitated by the empire's infrastructure. The imperial bureaucracy also created the administrative structures that would later serve as models for the Church. The organization of the empire into provinces, each governed by officials, closely mirrors the hierarchical structure that would come to define the Catholic Church. Over time, bishops took on administrative roles, and the connection between the Church and the empire deepened. Christianity as a political and cultural force. As Christianity began to gain recognition under Constantine, it slowly shifted from being a persecuted faith to becoming a dominant cultural and political force. Early on, Christianity was seen as a radical and subversive movement. The Romans viewed Christians as a threat because they refused to participate in state-sponsored religious practices and ceremonies, such as emperor worship. This defiance led to the periodic waves of persecution, but once Constantine's Edict of Milan was issued, the landscape of the empire changed dramatically. Christianity began to be woven into the very fabric of Roman society. As it grew in influence, it didn't just represent a religious belief, it also became a political tool. Emperors and other leaders recognized the power of the Christian community, and they began to use it to solidify their own political positions. Christianity, with its emphasis on charity, community, and moral law, was seen as a stabilizing force in the empire. The relationship between the Church and the Roman government reached its apex under Emperor Theodosius I, who made Christianity the state religion of the empire in 380 CE. The power of the Christian Church only continued to grow as it became the official religion of the empire, setting the stage for the Church to become the dominant institution in the medieval world. The role of the early popes in structuring the Church. While Constantine played a vital role in the early recognition and organization of Christianity, the role of the early popes in solidifying the Church's authority cannot be overstated. The papacy, as the supreme authority within the Catholic Church, was established not just through theological claims but also through political influence. The first pope widely recognized as the leader of the Church was Saint Peter, considered by many to be the foundational figure of the papacy due to his relationship with Jesus. The papacy's historical claim to spiritual authority was rooted in the idea that Peter was the rock upon which Jesus built his church, Matthew 16 verse 18. This claim to authority was passed down through an unbroken line of popes, reinforcing the idea of the papacy as a divinely appointed institution. However, the authority of the papacy wasn't solely about religious claims. It also involved real political power. In the early centuries, popes were heavily involved in the political landscape of Europe. The papacy gained political power as bishops and popes often found themselves mediating conflicts between kingdoms, providing political stability, and even influencing military campaigns. The influence of the pope grew as the Church became more deeply entrenched in the governance of Europe. The hierarchical structure of the Church, bishops overseeing dioceses, archbishops overseeing provinces, and the Pope presiding as the supreme leader, was formalized over time, paralleling the Roman imperial structure. This careful organization ensured that the Church could maintain control over its vast and growing network of believers. Monasticism and the spread of Christian culture. Another important factor in the growth of the Church was the rise of monasticism. While Christianity's spread in the early years had been focused primarily on urban centers, monastic communities played a key role in taking the faith to the rural areas of the empire. Monasteries became centers of learning, charity, and spiritual life, serving as a backbone for the Church's mission. Monastic communities, particularly those founded by figures like Saint Benedict, were instrumental in the preservation of Christian teachings during times of political instability. Monks dedicated their lives to prayer, study, and the copying of sacred texts. This not only helped preserve Christian doctrine but also made the teachings of the Church accessible to more people. As the centuries progressed, monasticism became a crucial vehicle for the spread of Christianity, particularly in Northern Europe, where it helped convert pagan tribes. The decline of paganism and the rise of Christian influence. As the Catholic Church grew in influence, paganism began to decline. The Roman Empire itself had long been polytheistic, but as Christianity spread, the Roman gods and goddesses were gradually abandoned. By the end of the 4th century, Christianity had effectively supplanted the old religious practices of Rome. This wasn't just a religious shift, it was also a cultural transformation. Pagan temples were repurposed as Christian churches, and many pagan festivals were co-opted into the Christian calendar, further ingraining Christianity into the daily life of the empire. The decline of paganism was a gradual process, but the full transformation of the Roman world into a Christian empire took place through centuries of struggle, diplomacy, and, at times, force. The Church's expansion and the eventual dominance of Christianity throughout Europe was solidified by the support of political authorities and the papacy. The Catholic Church's foundation wasn't solely a result of one person or event. It was a culmination of cultural, political, and spiritual forces that coalesced over time. From the vast influence of the Roman Empire to the personal struggles of early Christian leaders and the strategic decisions of emperors like Constantine, the Church's rise was both a divine and a human endeavor. Little-known revelations. While the widely known history of the Catholic Church often focuses on key events like the conversion of Constantine or the authority of the papacy, there are numerous lesser-known revelations that shed new light on its origins. These discoveries, some through archaeological findings, others through scholarly research, offer a more nuanced understanding of how the Church evolved in its earliest days. By exploring these revelations, we can better appreciate the rich and complex journey of Christianity as it transitioned from a persecuted faith to a global institution. The role of early Christian communities. One of the most fascinating aspects of early Christianity is the role of small, often underground Christian communities. While much of the focus has been on larger movements and events, the daily lives of early Christians in small communities have remained largely unexplored. These early groups, living in secret, were crucial to the spread of Christianity. Many of them were not officially recognized by the Roman authorities, yet they represented the heartbeat of the faith during times of persecution. Archaeological evidence has uncovered hidden Christian symbols in ancient homes, catacombs, and secret meeting places. These artifacts, such as Christian fish symbols, ichthyes, crosses, and fragments of early Christian texts, offer clues about the underground practices of early believers. They weren't just passive victims of Roman oppression, rather, they were active agents in spreading the gospel through secret gatherings and a network of believers. Through these discoveries, we understand that early Christian communities were not isolated, but part of a larger, often covert, movement that took shape in small, intimate settings. The idea of house churches, for example, highlights how Christians gathered in private homes for worship and communion. These gatherings provided the foundation for the later institutionalization of Christianity. Ancient Christian texts and documents. In addition to archaeological discoveries, ancient Christian texts have provided new insights into the formation of the Church. Many of these texts, which were considered apocryphal or non-canonical, were rediscovered in the 19th and 20th centuries. These writings, including the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, and the Didache, offer alternative views of early Christianity that differ from the canonical Gospels. The rediscovery of these texts has raised questions about the diversity of early Christian thought. While the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, became the foundation of the Christian canon, these other writings suggest that early Christianity was far from monolithic. Early Christians held a wide range of beliefs, some of which were later deemed heretical by the institutional church. The suppression of these alternative views in favor of a more unified doctrine played a pivotal role in the eventual formation of the church as we know it today. The Gospel of Thomas, for example, presents a version of Christianity that focuses on personal enlightenment and direct experience with God, which contrasts with the later, more institutionalized form of the faith. The Didache, on the other hand, offers practical advice for early Christian communities on how to live out their faith, including instructions on baptism, fasting, and the Eucharist. These texts not only highlight the diversity of early Christian practices but also reveal how the Church's structure and teachings were gradually formalized. Archaeological discoveries, the catacombs and early Christian sites. The early Christian catacombs, discovered beneath the city of Rome and other parts of the Roman Empire, have become one of the most significant sources of historical knowledge about the early Church. These underground burial sites, which were used by Christians for centuries, are more than just places of rest, they are a testament to the resilience and secretive nature of early Christianity. The catacombs reveal the deep spirituality and commitment of early Christians. Many of the tombs are adorned with frescoes, inscriptions, and symbols that reflect the Christian faith, including images of Christ, the Virgin Mary, and scenes from the Bible. The catacombs also reveal a strong sense of community, as many of the deceased were buried together, often with inscriptions commemorating their faith. Interestingly, some of the catacombs also contain early Christian writings and documents, preserved in their original forms, which have provided scholars with new insights into the early Church's beliefs and practices. For example, one inscription from the catacombs references the belief in the resurrection of the dead, a key Christian doctrine that became central to the faith. In addition to the catacombs, early Christian basilicas and churches, such as the one found at Duryuropos, an ancient city in modern-day Syria, have uncovered evidence of early Christian worship and ritual. The Duryuropos house church, for instance, shows that early Christian communities were already engaging in formal worship, including baptism, by the 3rd century. These sites help to trace the transformation of Christianity from an illicit, underground movement into a recognized and organized religion. The role of women in early Christianity. Another area of revelation that challenges conventional historical narratives is the role of women in the early Church. While the Church today is often viewed as male-dominated, early Christian communities were notably inclusive of women in leadership and ministry roles. Women played vital roles in spreading the Christian message and supporting the growth of the Church. Figures like Mary Magdalene, Phoebe, a deaconess mentioned in the New Testament, and Priscilla, a prominent early Christian teacher, show that women were actively involved in the leadership and ministry of early Christian communities. In fact, some scholars argue that early Christianity provided women with more freedom and authority than they had in other aspects of Roman society. Archaeological evidence from early Christian tombs and inscriptions shows that women were often buried alongside men, indicating their importance in the Christian community. Some tombs even bear inscriptions honoring women as leaders or apostles. These findings challenge the traditional view of Christianity as an exclusively male-dominated religion and suggest that women were integral to the early Christian movement. Political and religious power, the Church and the State. The relationship between the Church and the Roman state in the first few centuries was complex and often marked by tension. Early Christian leaders were sometimes forced to navigate the delicate balance between maintaining their faith and surviving in a pagan political world. This struggle was made even more complicated by the Church's growing relationship with the Roman authorities, which would eventually lead to its official recognition as the state religion. The interplay between religion and politics is seen most clearly in the role of bishops, who often wielded significant political power within their communities. As the Christian population grew, bishops became key figures in both the spiritual and political spheres. They were often called upon to mediate disputes, protect Christian communities from persecution, and even influence decisions at the highest levels of Roman government. In time, the Church's relationship with the Roman state would evolve from one of tension and persecution to one of collaboration and mutual support. The emergence of the papacy as a political and spiritual authority is a product of this historical trajectory, as the Church and the state gradually merged into a single force, reshaping the political landscape of Europe for centuries to come. These lesser-known revelations, ranging from the role of early Christian communities to the discoveries made in the catacombs and the role of women in the early Church, offer a richer and more complex picture of the origins of the Catholic Church. They reveal a faith that was far more diverse and dynamic than we often realize, and one that evolved through a combination of personal devotion, community resilience, and political maneuvering. Final reflections and spiritual implications. As we delve deeper into the origins of the Catholic Church, we uncover not only the historical facts but also the spiritual lessons embedded in its foundation. These revelations, ranging from the covert practices of early Christian communities to the strategic moves made by emperors, have much to teach us about the nature of faith, perseverance, and the complexities of religious evolution. While history offers us a clear view of the Church's rise from a small, persecuted movement to a dominant global institution, the spiritual journey of Christianity is not solely defined by institutionalization or political power. The foundation of faith, more than just history. What stands out from our exploration is the deep, unwavering faith that carried Christians through centuries of persecution. Early Christians, many of whom risked their lives to follow Jesus' teachings, did so not out of a desire for power or recognition, but out of a profound conviction that their beliefs would eventually shape the world. This spiritual foundation is more than just the backbone of an institution, it is a reminder of how personal faith can ignite widespread change. The foundational elements of Christianity, belief in resurrection, salvation, and love for one's neighbor, continue to resonate today, inviting us to reflect on our own spiritual journeys. The early Church was not merely a political entity, it was a community that sought to live out the message of Christ. For many, the persecution they endured only strengthened their resolve, demonstrating that faith is not simply something we hold in moments of comfort, but something we lean on in times of great adversity. This dynamic teaches us that the Church's story is one of spiritual resilience, one that transcends any single historical event. The Church's influence on modern faith. While the early Church's struggles and triumphs played a pivotal role in shaping the Catholic faith, we must also consider how the Church's foundation influences our own spiritual lives today. As believers, we are often called to examine our faith in light of the experiences of those who came before us. The Church's journey from persecution to establishment challenges us to reflect on the ways in which we practice and live out our own faith. What lessons can we learn from those early Christians who faced immense challenges yet maintained their faith? In today's world, we may not face the same level of persecution as the early Christians, but we still encounter struggles that test our beliefs. Whether it's a personal crisis, doubts about the future, or the complexities of living a faith-based life in a secular society, the Church's history can offer valuable insights into how we navigate our own journeys. Just as the early Christians found strength in their communities, we are reminded that faith is not a solitary pursuit but a communal one, meant to be shared and strengthened together. Moreover, the Church's gradual establishment as an institutional force invites us to consider the tension between spirituality and structure. While some might argue that the institutionalization of Christianity diminished its original message, others see it as a necessary step for ensuring that the faith was preserved and passed down to future generations. This balance between the spiritual essence of Christianity and its institutional forms continues to be a challenge within the Church today. The call to personal reflection and growth. The discoveries we've explored throughout this video encourage us to reflect not only on the past but on our personal spiritual paths. Just as early Christians faced profound challenges in establishing and spreading their faith, we too must navigate the challenges that come with maintaining a vibrant spiritual life in today's world. These revelations urge us to take a step back and evaluate how we can embody the principles of faith, community, and resilience in our own lives. Perhaps the most important takeaway is the recognition that the origins of the Church are as much about individual journeys as they are about collective history. Each Christian, whether in the first century or today, has the opportunity to contribute to the ongoing story of the Church. Our actions, our faith, and our commitment to the teachings of Christ shape the Church of tomorrow, just as the actions of early Christians shaped the Church we know today. The exploration of the early Church's origins has invited us to question, reflect, and grow in our understanding of both history and spirituality. The connection between the early Christians and modern-day believers is undeniable, and the lessons learned from the first centuries of Christianity can continue to guide us today. As we continue to seek knowledge and explore the depths of our faith, we are reminded that the journey of the Church is far from complete. It is a living, breathing entity, continually evolving as each generation contributes to its story. By reflecting on the past, we are better equipped to navigate the future. Whether we are exploring the historical foundations of the Church or simply seeking to deepen our personal faith, the revelations we've uncovered offer us an invitation to grow in understanding and spiritual maturity. As we reach the end of this journey through the early foundations of the Catholic Church, we've uncovered many layers of history, belief, and spirituality that continue to shape our world today. From the humble beginnings of Christianity in the Roman Empire to the rise of powerful figures like Constantine, the path the Church took is as complex as it is significant. But what stands out most from this exploration is the unwavering faith and resilience of those early Christians, whose actions have paved the way for the global influence of Christianity we see today. We've seen how the interplay of faith, persecution, power, and theology contributed to the rise of the Catholic Church. These lessons from the past not only reveal the intricacies of history but also provide us with a deeper understanding of how the foundations of the Church still impact our lives today. The Church's origins aren't just a collection of dates and events, they represent a living story of spiritual perseverance, unity, and transformation. If you found value in this exploration, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. There's so much more to uncover about history, faith, and the enduring legacy of the Church. Stay tuned for future content that will continue to challenge, inspire, and broaden our understanding of the world and our place in it. Thank you for watching, and remember to keep seeking, learning, and growing in your faith.